And so I'd like to welcome now Tal Chalozin, who's co-founder and chief technology officer at Innovid, as well as David Spencer, manager of emerging media and partnerships, General Motors. So Tal, David, welcome and take it away.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's very exciting to be here. It's awesome to be in person.
Yeah, great David. To be here. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Tal.
Should we kick it right off?
Let's go.
Okay, jumping into to our conversation. First point that I'm very excited about. Clearly, Innovid has been in the kind of streaming business for quite a long time, and the last 18 months or more than that has been amazing. We've seen a lot of tailwinds in the streaming space. We took the company public. Hello. We took the company public on the heels of streaming. How does this look like for GM? So the shift to streaming and the shift to CTV. How did you change your marketing behavior as a massive car manufacturer?
Yeah, we, as you know, General Motors is and always has been a big supporter of television and has invested quite a bit in linear television in particular. But about 5 years ago, we started to acknowledge that streaming was coming. You know, you saw the early signs with cord cutters. You saw the early signs with the movement and change in behavior of people moving to streaming. And we knew that if we didn't start to experiment in the space and do more in the different streaming platforms, try to understand where we were missing, we started to slowly shift and invest more and more in streaming. And it's an area that, you know, we think is very powerful at General Motors. We see tremendous value in the streaming space, not just from an audience perspective, but also from a creative perspective, which I know that we're going to talk about.
And where do you think, if you kind of zoom out, where do you think we are in that shift? Maybe less from a consumer standpoint, but more obviously as a massive marketer in the space. Are we in the early innings? Are you, as you said, in a test and learn type of an environment? Are you full scaled, rolled out?
I would say we're in the teenage years of CTV and streaming. Very close to adulthood.
A lot of alcohol.
Almost, yeah, very, very close to getting a full-time job. The streaming area right now, obviously going through massive changes. You heard the Netflix announcement this week. I think they're, potentially a little late getting to this from an advertising side, but it's an area that we feel like has tremendous potential.
You mean ad-supported streaming?
Ad-supported platforms. I think, if you want to look to, Tal mentioned that he doesn't want this to be an advertisement, but, I'll say it for him from the perspective of taking advantage of the platform's capabilities. I think Innovid years ago did a fantastic job of, we all know that the ecosystem is very complex and that we've got a number of siloed platforms that all have their own kind of user navigation, and they all have their own quirks about them and own complexities, and they serve advertising differently, they target differently, they share data differently. Innovid, kind of from a creative perspective, really did a nice job of simplifying that complexity, and we'll solve that for the advertisers, so the advertisers don't have to worry about that. We'll take your creative that you already spent millions of dollars shooting, and we'll adapt that to the different platforms, however the users themselves are using these platforms. So then for us, that allows us to focus on the bigger areas of how do we find our audiences in each of these platforms? We spend time, money, effort, people on merging data, building these very complex, sophisticated audience profiles. How do we activate those in the marketplace? And that's where, you know, we're trying to grow as a company and grow in marketing in terms of activating our most powerful audiences across everything that we're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the plug. Totally unplanned, but awesome nonetheless. So thank you for that. Just to play on that, I 100% agree. We see the same thing. Obviously, that the market is extremely fragmented. Not only that there are many services, but also a lot of different apps and a lot of different devices with many different technologies behind the scenes. That even if a viewer doesn't really see that, but the technology behind it is very fragmented, and this is where we invest a lot. So thank you for appreciating that. Another thing we're interested in, we're about to embark on the upfronts, on the new fronts next week. What are you looking to see from creative, from tech partners, from media partners? What are the things that you've been on the forefront of testing and learning on many different platforms? What do you think 2022 will bring, or what are you looking for?
More refined measurement, I think, is number one with a bullet. That's an area that, you know, there's a number of ways to attack the measurement issue that we have in streaming television. And, you know, it's important for us, in order to make sure that we've got consistency across what we're doing from a currency perspective, to have that consistent standard that we can base our negotiating off of. Flexibility, I think, is a key area. We need networks and publishers to work with us in terms of, you know, how the advertising gets served across platforms and how we can control that frequency across platforms. So a lot of it is about flexibility. And then, you know, you've mentioned creative. Creativity is extremely important to what we're trying to do, because we're doing a lot of experimentation in many different platforms, trying to best understand what users are going to be most receptive to in these platforms. The reality is that they're largely, the streaming universe, as it's growing, is dominated by a much younger audience than we may have typically seen on the linear side. So that's an area where we're trying to do things differently, because this is an entirely new set of consumers that has grown up with technology in a way that the previous set of consumers did not. And we need to understand how they're using that technology and how we can better serve how they're using that technology.
Can't agree more. Just playing on that, so many new services are coming. You mentioned Netflix. This is clearly more of a forward-looking statement, but other services are going big into ad-supported. HBO, we heard Discovery here prior, or Warner Bros. Discovery. Disney Plus announced that this year they will see ads. We believe that when those services come out, they will rethink the ad experience a lot more than what it was before. Maybe even Amazon. I know you guys are a big NFL sponsor. When Amazon is coming into Thursday Night Football this year in 2022, I don't know. Just this is more of a unscripted question, but I'm going off script here. But what do you think about when all of those services are coming in this year? What do you want to see? Are you asking them for something different on ad experiences?
Yeah, I think we're always asking for something different on ad experiences. The one focus we need to maintain is on that end user. And I think a lot of the mistakes that are made in marketing and advertising forget that there is a person on the other end of this, and just because we want them to behave one way doesn't mean they're going to behave one way. We need to think about what is it that we can provide to them that is going to be useful and something that they can, that helps them within, in our case, the car buying process. How can we be more helpful to our users in the car buying process? And a lot of that goes back to the creative and how we can be more creative, whether it be, creating environments that users can navigate our different vehicles, or environments where, I know we're going to talk about it, but the whole digital car buying process is evolving.
Good segue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So on the digital car buying, I'm interested. Obviously, a lot of your business is on the tier 2, tier 3 side of the business, the actual purchase. I personally, during the pandemic, purchased a car on Carvana. I know you guys launched Car Bravo recently as a General Motors own digital buying platform. How will all of those digital platforms change the way? Like, maybe we'll take it from a measurement and data standpoint, obviously from a marketing as well, but specifically from first-party data and your ability to get your hands on the pulse of what's going on.
It's going to change things massively. To be clear, Car Bravo is our used car brand that we just launched and is supposed to kind of take advantage of. Everyone knows there's a lot of issues with inventory in the marketplace right now, new inventory. And so this is a spot where we knew that there's demand for cars out there. And so how can we better serve people and get them vehicles, driving in vehicles now while the supply is low. From a tier 1 through tier 3 perspective, and for those in the audience, because sometimes we use automotive lingo and people don't.
Sorry for dropping jargon.
Yeah. So tier 3 are our dealers and our dealer networks, and they're actually independently owned. And so we have to work with that entire network and collaborate on the whole digital car buying process. And so, and tier 2 is just groups of dealers that we work with directly. And so it gets very complex to start to string together all of the data owned by the dealers and all of the data owned by the dealer groups and all of the data owned at a national level. And that's something that we're working on right now at GM to better understand from an attribution perspective, ultimately from first exposure to sale and then beyond sale, what is that customer lifetime value, and how does advertising impact that customer lifetime value, or how does it impact their decision making during the car buying process? So it's all in the works. I would say that we've got a long way to go, and there are a number of limitations in place and things that we need to consider. We are very privacy centric, and again, turning it around on thinking about it from the consumer perspective, we want to make sure that we don't break that contract with our customers, that we use their data in a way that they haven't given us permission to do. So that's something that is appropriately delaying the advancement of this kind of attribution modeling and likewise the targeting up front.
And is that again on that innovation on measurement and the work that you're doing? How much of that digital car buying part used or not? How does that impact right now the actual signal of success? Is that the core element, or or it's one attribute out of many, and you still use reach metrics?
Oh, without a doubt, it's one of many. I mean, it's something better than we've ever had. Amazon has broken the mold on being able to track a consumer from beginning to end. Yeah. But that is one signal. Absolutely important for us to measure reach and use reach as something in part of our strategy and objectives. At any given time, only 2% of the U.S. population is in the market for buying a car. So that's a small number, but a giant number of people that we've got to make sure that we're not missing, so that when they do hit that moment,
do get into the 2%.
Yeah, they're ready to go, because by that time, if you haven't talked to them, it's too late.
We got only a few minutes before we wrap it up and get into questions. By the way, everyone here and virtually, prepare for, if you have any questions. We'll get mic runner in a second. Anything last? Something that you said that you're looking into innovation, measurement, and in creative. Anything that you are working on right now, or you're excited to share, or projects that you would like to see soon?
Well, I will say I've been tasked with how we're going to tackle the metaverse. So that's a big deal.
I should have asked you directly about the metaverse.
Yeah. So
is there GM presence in the metaverse already?
We've dabbled in it, and we're going to be doing a lot more. Yeah. Nice. In the coming years. I mean, it's still very nascent, and obviously there's a lot for us to figure out, for a lot of advertisers to figure out. But from a TV perspective, absolutely. Creative is an area that I think, I heard once someone say that most people only use like 5% of Microsoft Excel's capabilities. And I think from a creative perspective in television, I think that's where we're at. And I think that we need to kind of turn creative on its head. There's too much of that old traditional way of thinking of how do I build the best 30-second spot possible, rather than starting from the ground up and build the best spot for the consumer that can fragment into 100 different, very relevant pieces of creative.
Well said. When we started Innovid, we had a saying that we want to build a platform that reward viewers' attention instead of demanding it. So changing the old model of you're forced to watch an ad break to something, say, like, you have a lot of options. So we should use our time on the soapbox to build something that totally reward your attention.
Yes.
So, can agree with you more. I love your 5%. Okay, let's. Now it's your part. Questions? Anyone? Anyone in the crowd? Mr. Kettleman. Normally I would say no, but this is a.
That was interesting. Thank you. You made the analogy of Convergent TV being in its teenage years. My question is on the way that people buy cars now, like if you were to do another analogy about what inning it was in or something, like it seems to me like the way people are buying cars now is going to be radically different 1, 2, 3 years down the road. Like, and again, I don't know who wins tier 3 versus tier 1 or how that ultimately looks, but to me, it's all going to depend on what that experience is on people seeing an ad on TV.
Yeah. Great question. I would suggest it a little bit differently in that the dealers we work together with, they're not the enemy. And, just because, we're working on how to more fluidly build a digital buying process in the automotive space, that doesn't mean that the dealers aren't part of that. They're a very important part and piece to this, because you still have to have a physical location for these giant vehicles. And you still have to have that endpoint transaction. So I think it's just how we can seamlessly do that. And if I were to use the same analogy, it's probably in its infant years, right? But the difference is, I think that once we kind of turn a corner and get platforms in place, it's going to rapidly advance, because that is an area that I think consumers want. And I think that when consumers have that, consumers are so used to the Amazon experience where they have all of the information and they have all of the data, all of the pricing, full transparency, and can make the decision themselves, and boom, in a heartbeat, they've got it on their doorstep the next day. So in theory, that would be a beautiful thing in the automotive industry.
It's not that far off. It seems to me like it'd be like real, like a national campaign that has real inventory for everybody's, like wherever they're at.
Yep.
Please, yes. All of Innovid friends, thank you all for coming.
There we go. Thank you. David, this has been a really interesting, great conversation. You guys have shared some great insights. You touched on your sensitivity to consumer data, and that you don't want to break that contract with consumers. Yet it seems like car buying, the process, there's great position there for you to offer value to the consumer for their data. That's what everyone talks about. There isn't enough value for the consumer to want to give their data. So why wouldn't GM lean into that and make a contract with the consumer that if you give us your data, we're going to make the car buying experience so much better for you?
Yeah.
So where are you on that spectrum, and what are you doing to try to leverage that?
Yeah, great point. We're working on it for sure. Yeah, totally recognize and acknowledge the value that's there, but it's not something that you can make a mistake on more than once. So it's that balance between protecting consumer privacy, maintaining their trust that we're going to use it in a way that's going to benefit them, and then not insignificant is the permissioning, and it's all in the language of the permissioning, and not buried in the fine print permissioning. It's, listen, this is how we're going to use your data, and are you okay with that? And if so, it's going to result in you having a little more seamless experience. So definitely working on it, definitely see the value in it, but there's a lot of legacy kind of hesitation, pipes, legal things in place that we have to...
Trust and safety was always such ingrained in General Motors. And Mary has been talking about it every time.
It has been for a long time,
Okay, we have a couple more seconds. Should we take a virtual? I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Should we take a virtual question? See, we have a question from a virtual audience for a second. So we had a question. We'll do it quick. What metrics and KPI do you see as the most important and influential in CTV for 2022? Metrics and KPI for CTV in 2022. We'll do a lightning round.
Okay, so I think metrics and KPIs, I would say for CTV, my opinion is reach. I think that is an underserved metric in the CTV space, because you're trying to, there's been so many comparisons to linear and so many people focused on this individual touch point that they lose sight that reach is still a massive piece of this and is important.
I know it's not a question for me, but I'll add my take on that, is that I think it's 100% on reach. We hear it all the time, but it's and adding the unduplicated nature of that. So it's the market is so fragmented, and it's very hard to cobble it together, understand am I getting the same household again, or I'm getting a net new viewer that was not exposed anywhere else. So can agree more. I guess we're at time. Can I take? Yes, amazing. More questions.
So, get this on.
You can shout.
you talk about creativity and you talk about your customer only being in the market at any given time, 2% of your.
Yeah.
So how do you think, or what have been your thoughts or strategy shift on knowing that your customer is only in the market for 2%, and now we have this world of streaming? So from a creative perspective, you obviously have to give your customer value along the way before that buying process. So has that allowed you more creative executions, or how is that playing into your creative strategy?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot right now in terms of experimentation with dynamically inserted creative, and yes, there has to inherently be more creative executions. We've got a much more sophisticated kind of breakdown of audiences, and there's a different audience for our smaller vehicles versus our trucks. So we have to be able to have creative that can speak to the different personalities and different wants and needs of each of these customers. So it's something that we're building from a dynamic perspective. We're using companies like Innovid from a creative perspective and trying to fuse the data of our audiences and match that with creative versions. But there's a lot of work to do there because it has to be approached very early on in the creative process. It just takes time to build.
Thank you. I guess that's our cue. Thank you. Thank you very much.